Hello, and welcome to the Coach Right podcast, where we explore how to turn coaching expertise into published pages. I'm your host, Helen O'Neill, portfolio career specialist, accredited future of work coach, author and creator of Coach Right 90, the writing program specifically designed for coaches. You can get the episode show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachright.co.uk. It's time for the next chapter. Welcome to the Coach Right podcast. Helen here, recording on Saturday, the 2nd of May, 2026, and this is episode 21. My guest today is Holger Nils Pohl. Holger has published over a dozen books and so shares what I would call advanced techniques on how to get your book into the hands of readers. It's a rich conversation. He's an experienced coach, strategist, and author, and I think you're going to get a lot out of what we cover. One of those things is how he's used crowdfunding campaigns through Kickstarter for some of his projects. And that's the topic of this week's blog. If you're curious to know more about what Kickstarter is and how you might use that in your own author business, pop over to coachright.co.uk/blog to read more about that. In personal news, I am absolutely delighted to share that I have finished self-editing the Resilience book. Ta-da! It is such an amazing place to be, and I am now only 214 citations and notes away from completing the process. Yeah, you can hear the terror in my voice there, can't you? But it's brilliant because I still have a month to go until the editor is booked. And as I have said before, I've never actually booked my editor before I finished self-editing before. So I was a bit concerned I wasn't going to meet the deadline. So I'm really pleased that I've got plenty of time ahead of me to get everything ready to send across to her. Now, as often happens when I come to the end of a project, the next book project has started to tap me on the shoulder. And I will share more about my thinking and my process as I structure and outline the book over the summer months. In the meantime, I'm going to be refocusing slightly and revisiting a fiction project that I've had on the back burner for quite some time. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, my first book was actually a mystery fiction title called The Murder at Kendrick Manor. And it was published under my pen name, Jodie Darby. I absolutely love writing fiction and have had that first draft written for about 3 years. It was just before I decided to make my career pivot from corporate, and it's calling to me. I really want to get it finished and out into the world. I've always said that fiction is for fun. And in today's conversation with Holger, we talk quite a lot about how your book can absolutely be part of your business model. And sometimes it's important to write a book of your heart. So my fiction isn't part of my business. I write it purely because I love it. And when it comes to mystery, there's something brilliantly fun about working out all the puzzles. But I hope that it will be finished early next year, and hopefully some of you will enjoy it. There's been rather a lot going on over the past couple of weeks. I ran a masterclass on Friday on the topic of coaching practitioner to published author. Thank you so much for those of you who attended live and for those of you who watched the recording. I shared that the doors to Coach Right 90 are open. And if you are a coach who is determined to get your words into the world, I would be delighted to have you join us in that cohort. As far as I'm aware, it's the only program that is specifically dedicated to coaches who want to publish. A couple of questions came up. The first one was, does it matter where you are in the process? And the answer to that question is no. You can absolutely join with the seed of an idea or a partly finished project or a first draft. I've always been a massive believer in meeting people where they are and giving them what they need. And having people at different stages in the process is actually helpful for everybody. The second question was about time. We spent quite a large amount of the session talking about time because the hard truth is that the difference between someone who aspires to write and someone who actually becomes an author is time at the page. We are all busy. Whether you have children, a day job, a coaching practice at whatever stage, we are all writing in the margins. There are no exceptions. And so just like any other transformational goal, we have to find where those margins are for us. It's why the program is 90 days. It's short enough to build momentum and progress and to work out how you can fit writing into your life. I'll never say that it's easy, but I'll always say that it's worth it. And I would absolutely love to help you on your writing journey too. The details are in the show notes and at coachwrite.co.uk/coachwrite90. Last week, I talked about Draft to Digital and the changes that they've made to their terms and conditions that mean that now there's a charge to set up an account with them and an ongoing subscription fee if you fall below $100 per year threshold for royalties. Draft to Digital are a distributor. So what that means is that you can publish your titles on there and then they will distribute them to the various online stores. I publish directly to Amazon and Kobo for ebooks, and I use Draft to Digital for everywhere else. Now, something to note here, ebooks do not sell particularly well for nonfiction. The vast majority of my sales are hardback. So my only title, People Who Pivot, I have through Draft to Digital at the moment, but it doesn't meet the $100 per year threshold. And I debated whether or not to remove my book from the service and wait until I had a larger back catalogue before re-engaging. But as I was reflecting, I remembered that accessibility is really important to me. And I am very aware that for some readers, ebooks are a much more accessible format for them to get words. So I have made the decision to keep my books in D2D. Whilst commercially, in the short term, this will become a nominal cost within my business, morally, I think it's important to ensure that books are available to as many people as possible. And I particularly appreciate my books being available in libraries in ebook form. So that's why I've made my decision. In publishing news, the Authors Guild has announced that they have created a model contract clause for the use of AI in publishing. Now, again, I'll link the full page in the show notes, but there are a couple of key areas to call out here. The first is around publishers being required not to upload the author's personal information or manuscript to commercial AI for the purposes of training. This is regardless of whether they have the manuscript for query submission or whether or not they've agreed to publish it, unless the author has given express permission. The second point is that they say that there should be no substantive editing with AI. And this is a really interesting one because what they've said on their website, and I'll quote here, is that the publisher agrees and warrants that it will not use AI to substantially edit a manuscript, excepting the use of basic spelling and grammar checking applications. This aligns with the declaration that Amazon requires you make when you upload a book on the platform to confirm the extent of AI use in your process. So once again, what's important here is if you're intending to work with a traditional publisher, remember that it's vital you check the terms and conditions of working with that business. I was speaking with a coach just this week who intends to submit their book for a literary competition, and partway through the process, that competition changed their stance on using AI to support structural editing. Personally, when it comes to structural editing, I tend to recommend working with AI to generate a feedback report rather than a markup. But what's not clear is whether this would be considered substantive editing. What is clear is that using a tool like ProWriting Aid for spelling and grammar is absolutely fine. No one minds if you get some help putting commas in the right place. If you're planning to independently publish, you don't need to worry about this at all. Remember instead to consider what you want to achieve with your book, where you stand on ethical use of AI, and what service you want to provide to your readers. I can't help but draw parallels with my coaching practice here. I continue to find AI incredibly useful for my process, and I prefer to keep it out of the coaching room and away from my final words. Anyway, that's enough from me. It's time for the interview with Holger and the next chapter. Welcome to the Coach Right podcast. My guest today is Holger Nils Pohl, visual strategist, communication designer, and author of over a dozen books. He helps leaders and teams make complex ideas visible through facilitation, design thinking, and visual communication. And as a partner at Agile Academy, he works at the intersection of innovation strategy and leadership development. His books include business guide, such as the fabulous Creating Clarity, through to children's books, drawing books, and fantasy fiction. Welcome to the show, Holger.
Thank you, Helen. It's wonderful to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know we're going to have a brilliant conversation. So if we can start by telling us a little bit more about you and your path to publication.
So I think it's important to say that I have a bit of a different pathway to business. So in basic education, I'm a communication designer, and I came from a place where I would draw a lot. I was a teacher at an art school for a lot of years as well in my 20s and early 30s, and I discovered that using visual tools like drawing and templates and all that kind of sort of tools really helps people to understand topics way better than if they only talk. And I brought that into my practice pretty early on, like 12 years ago. And that built my path forward. So everything I do is under the topic of the so-called visual thinking. And I really like very complex topics for when I'm coaching people, when I'm facilitating workshops and helping leaders to grow their companies. And I think it's really powerful to use those visual tools, drawings, and templates, which is also a challenge when you see my books, because they are very visual. They use a lot of visual explanations and what I would say, and a lot of other people say, beautiful drawings, which is sometimes a bit more complicated to produce afterwards. So I didn't make my life easier when it comes to books, although I think books deserve to be beautiful. But that's, that might be another story for later, I guess. And my path to publication was always first self-published, because I really want to have the control. As a communication designer, I want to have control about the cover. I want to decide the cover or design the cover on my own. I want to decide on how it looks inside. I want to decide about the paper quality, everything. I really need the control. So that's why I decided for self-publishing. Although I have a few books published with publishers, mostly in German, because the German market is a bit tricky when it comes to publishing, especially self-publishing. But like first and foremost, that was my way to go. Keep control about everything I do, and therefore self-publish.
Amazing. There's so many interesting routes we could go from there. But I think I try and keep this in some sort of chronological order. So what was your first book?
So my first book, actually, when I say I was going to self-publish, that might be even a small lie, because my very first book was Creating Innovation, a German book with the English title, but that's more fancy. Even in the German market, English titles are more fancy. Was together with a good friend, a professor that I teach together at a university in Cologne. And it was about learning, basically. I think the basic idea is still great. We don't use the book too much nowadays, but the basic idea was that when you try to design for the future, why don't you look for the people who tried to design for the future in the past? Because the future of the people in the past is our present, and we now can see if their techniques work, right? Because now, like, what people always ask is, how would an innovation technique work? And how can you say it? Because the future is not here. But we can say it for those people who lived like 100, 200, 300 years ago. We can actually say what they did worked. And we researched and figured out what kind of techniques did those people use even back in the 1600 to work for the future on innovation, and did it actually work or not? And we translated those techniques into visual tools. And I think still it's a great idea for a book, and it's a wonderful book, but it got a time. So I think it's now 12 years old or so, and that's why it's kind of discontinued. So that was my first book with a publisher. And after that, with the experiences with the publisher, I said, I need more control. And then seriously started writing in 2019-20, around the pandemic, when I published drawing books and started to world building in my fantasy book, as well as started to really lay out the Creating Clarity book, which is my most important book by now. So that's when it really started and kicked off, actually.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? One of the questions I often ask people is whether or not they're going to write another book.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you either get the bug or you don't on that first one, don't you? And that first one is really where you learn all the things. You learn if you're going to write for the rest of your life, for one, which clearly the answer is yes. And then you learn which path to publication is best for you and what compromises you're willing to make or not. So it's fascinating to see that you've kind of evolved that journey throughout. And I love the fact that obviously you call yourself a visual strategist, which is such a fabulous job title. But, I'm fortunate enough to have known you for quite some time. And even I am able to draw the way that you teach how to draw. And so I'm really interested in how you bring those visual cues into your work.
That's a good question. So first of all, we're not used to draw. So one of the biggest challenges always is that I would be the person with a pen in hand when I'm working with people and nobody else would draw, which is a bit of a challenge. It's already better than if nobody is drawing. But people would lay back a bit and say, okay, Holger's here. He will take care of everything we say. But why I think visual thinking is so powerful and drawing is so powerful is that we externalize our thoughts onto like an artifact, like a piece of paper. And that is so powerful because that's the first time and the only way how we really can see the thoughts of somebody else. Right? If you imagine we just try to talk to each other or we just read words, it's always our interpretation. It's like how I understand your words is different than somebody else would understand it. We have different lives, different experiences. You have slightly different connotations on your words than I do. Not talking about I'm a German native, not an English native. So when we're in business, we even have that language barrier. But when people start to put simple drawings, and that could be a rectangle, that could be an arrow, that could be a word that is connected to another word. That is already a visual on a paper, right? People start to see the connections and people start to understand when I say this is important, I mean actually that. And if somebody else is saying this is important, they mean something else. And as an example, what I really like to do is when I have like 10 people in a room and we're talking about the strategy of a company, and we try to figure out what would be the future strategy. I always ask, are you aligned on the current strategy? And that is a typical coaching question as well. And of course, everybody would say, yes, we are. It's super clear. We talk about this all the time. And I say, okay, that's great. So here's a piece of paper. Everybody gets a sheet of sticky notes, like basically printables that they can just pick off the paper and put on the A3 paper and create a visual of the strategy. So I say, you don't need to draw. You have pre-prepared icons and you have a pen to draw some arrows. Please visualize the strategy of the company, everybody individually. So what's happening is they do that for 50 minutes. They feel a bit embarrassed, but they have fun. And then they put the strategies on the wall. And what do we see? We see 10 different strategies of the same company. And it's not to blame them in terms of like you were wrong. It's just to make them see that they are not aligned. They're not truly aligned. But what then happens is they stand in front of those pictures and they ask each other very precise questions to say, I thought the sales funnel looked actually like this. Why did you visualize it here? Why do you think like the supply chain is so important? Because we said this and that is the most important battle to fight. And why did you place this here? And why? Like they have very distinct, precise questions to each other. And then they have alignment afterwards because they can create that picture together again. And I think that's why it's so powerful to use them. Also, never give somebody just a pen and assume they draw something, they will never do it.
Yeah.
But figure out ways how you help them to visualize something with prepared cards, with constellations, whatever you can use to help them make their thinking more clear.
Yeah. So many people identify as a visual learner or a visual thinker. And yet, as you say, the blank page is quite possibly one of the most terrifying things, isn't it? I mean,
Horrifying, yeah.
as writers, we definitely know that. But if someone asks you to draw and that's not something you've done since you were at school, of course, that's way outside a comfort zone. So those techniques and tools to help people on that journey is incredibly powerful. So the other thing I wanted to pick up on is, again, a lot of the people listening to this show think about their books in terms of how they can fit inside their business. And I know that you take a very strategic view of your books being part of your business model. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah. First, like the first book was really not planned, not strategically aligned or something. But after the experience of having written that book, published that book, learned a bit how it works, I really thought about how would that fit into a business model. That said, I'm a professional business model innovator and consultant too. So for over a decade, I'm working with companies on business model innovation and business model evolution. So my thinking is always around that, to say whatever you do needs to fit into your business model in one way or the other. And what a lot of people not misunderstand, but don't value enough, I think, are the key resources of your business. And the key resources, of course, if you are a coach, for example, that's you, because you spent the time, you have the knowledge. But another key resource is that people actually believe in your thought leadership. And thought leadership comes still from good books. And I'm saying good books because there are a lot of people out there that are just throwing books out there that are really not good, like really crap, badly written. Content is really shallow. It's more like a sales story. Perhaps like it's a business card or something. That's it. What I mean is, if you have a really thought through, well-crafted book, that gives you that position of a thought leader in the field that you're working in. Even if it's a book about something that somebody else wrote about it already, I mean, that's not a problem, because when you write it from your own perspective, that's how you see it, and people want to work with you, so why not? And that's how I actually created Creating Clarity. So I had, of course, the idea to write it because it's containing all the topics that I was talking about for a decade. And people asked me for, is there a book? And is there a book? So there was a demand. But on the other hand, I thought, like, if I write it, how does that fit into my business model? And in the end, the book made me actually a lot of money. I think we said we talk about money on this show too,
We
right?
do talk about money on this show.
Yes. So I ran a Kickstarter campaign first to pay for the production of the book. And that Kickstarter campaign was quite successful. So I made 32,000 euros in revenues for that book, and 18,000 of that within the first 24 hours. That happened because I was having people participate in the process. So while I was writing it, I was talking about it. I was checking on social media on the best cover, on the best title, and made a lot of experiments online. So people knew I'm working on this. So that helped. But that was the first income. And basically, if you look at like the income of authors, 32,000 euros revenue is something that like only a few % of authors made anyways at all time with a book. But then even more important is that, for example, I had the book online and said, this is my Kickstarter campaign. Just based on the video about the Kickstarter campaign, I made roughly 15 to 20,000 euros in revenues on keynotes and jobs, because somebody like a CEO saw the video about the book and said, like, this sounds really good. Would you do a keynote for us? And then I would go for keynote speaking as well and say, look, you don't have to pay me a salary for a keynote, but you can buy 350 books instead and give that to every participant. It's a great sales proposal for an event because they can give a great thing to people. It's a wonderful book and a well-crafted book. They have something to give away. They don't have to pay me extra money, but I get the money anyways. Not that much as I would get a salary, but 350 people have my book in hand, which will guaranteed lead to a new job, right? Because people read it and say, oh, that's great. I saw the keynote. I want to have that guy in my company or for another keynote. So overall, I made easily over 6 figures with that one book, not by selling the book, but because I had the book. And I think that's really important to think about. And the other thing is, just as a nice to have, it's just wonderful if you do like a coaching session or you give a training and you gift people your book, right? So they come in the room and it's full of books for them. Like, wow, that's great. And hey, it's even written by the trainer, even better. They love it, right? They get get you to sign it.
Yeah.
And when you sign it in the break. And it's always a good story to tell. And people just believe more in you as well. On the other side, you believe more in yourself too, right? It's a huge confidence builder as well. No matter how well it's sells, like on Amazon, for example, Creating Clarity is not a bestseller, and I don't care because it made me over 6 figures. Who cares about the best-selling batch, right?
It's so that's so important. So the amount of people that I speak to, and I always say, you have to know what you want to get out of your book when you start. If that Amazon sticker is really important to you, then there are ways and means of doing that. Short, sharp, get your sticker. You won't sell very many books. You won't have a long tail of that sales process.
Yeah.
But if that's important to you, then that is fine. And if you want to make money consistently, there are more strategic routes. I do want to circle back very quickly because I'm conscious that a lot of people listening probably haven't heard of Kickstarter before. So I just want to touch on what that actually is.
Yeah, sorry.
No, not at all. Because I think this is the thing, isn't it? We get sucked into the publishing world and then suddenly you're like, oh, yeah, probably people don't know that. So can you give us a quick explanation of Kickstarter and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So Kickstarter is basically a way to pre-finance what you're doing. It's called a crowdfunding platform. So what you do is you go to Kickstarter, in my case, with a book and say, I will write this book, or I have written this book and I want to produce that book. And you can buy the book already, like a pre-order. And if enough people buy it now, I will produce the book, right? That's the basic idea. So what you do on Kickstarter is you say, I need 1,000 euros. You put that at your threshold, at the project goal, basically. And if you get enough people together, in total, they pay 1,000 euros, you will get the payment after the project, and they will get your product because you are then having to produce it and send it to those people. It's a huge hustle, right? It's a lot of work. Like if you, in most cases, you say between 15 or 30 days, the project is running. And during those days, you will be busy with it every day, right? Talking about it, managing like direct messages and emails and stuff. And you offer people different levels. So they could buy, for example, the ebook. They could buy the print book. They could buy an assigned book. They could buy the combination of everything or something completely else. You could even offer individual coaching sessions or what I did with another book that's Biz for Kids. It's a business comic book for kids. We made 42,000 Swiss franc on this. So we sold for 4,000 Swiss franc. That was one level. We sold that you could have your kid as a character in the final comic book. We had 4 of those options, and all those 4 were gone in 12 hours or something. And people pay that money up front, but they only pay it if your project is successful, which is nice too. So there's no risk for the people besides that you won't deliver, which can, of course, happen. I hope I explained it properly what Kickstarter is.
That's a brilliant explanation.
I think important for Kickstarter is always, you should have the book finished before you think about Kickstarter. Because once you start Kickstarter, that's a whole project in itself. It's a marketing project, and you will be busy doing Kickstarter, and you will not finish your book during the Kickstarter. It's not possible. And you put a lot of pressure on yourself. And we did the mistake with our comic book, actually, because then we were a year delayed. So we did the Kickstarter campaign before we had it finished as kind of a market test. But then we took another year to actually create the comic book, and people got quite angry on us. So best practice is write your book. Don't think about how you want to sell it first. Write your book, create a beautiful book, and then you can decide, okay, I will do a Kickstarter. And then you do the Kickstarter once you finish the book, right?
Great
Because
advice.
one step at a time.
Yeah. And it's quite often in the coaching industry, there's this kind of test the market message, isn't there, of like, go out and sell what your program before you've built it, because if you haven't got proof that there's an audience for it, then there's no point putting the effort in. When it comes to a crowdfunding campaign in Kickstarter, the opposite is very much the message that you get from people that have done it before, like yourself, that just go, seriously, write the book first and then do the Kickstarter. This is not the time to do it the other way around. So very, very good advice.
Especially important if you are a professional coach, you're losing credibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you do it that way. And that's something that you never want to, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And special editions are a little bit of a thing for you, aren't they?
Yeah.
Tell me more about your most recent special edition, because it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. So just recently, I published 6 new books. Basically, it's 4 old books in a new layout. So we redesigned them. It's all drawing books, step-by-step drawing books. And we had already 4. We redesigned them, packaged them new, but basically normal paperbacks. And then we have 2 new drawing books as well. And all those 6 books together, we thought it would be a nice idea to create a special edition, which was another test if that works. And actually it worked out, like small spoiler on this. So we took all the 6 books, and what I never saw before, at least in nonfiction, is painted edges of books. We see that all the time in fiction, right? In fantasy and romance, everywhere you have sprayed edges, painted edges. You have even people who are earning their living by now by painting individual books. So I said to my illustrator, let's have fun and take 60 books, so 10 bundles of 6 books, and paint them, because it fits perfectly also on the meta. It's a drawing book and we draw on the edges, right? So we created like very colorful books, like rainbow colors, and we had we have some icons on the edges now, all with acrylic. We filmed everything. I launched it to my newsletter. Another very important thing, by the way, when you're starting to publish or being a coach, I think. But I published that only to my newsletter. I offered it at a high price. So normally the package, like if you buy all 6 books, would be 69 euros, I think. And we sold them for 249 each. And by now, I mean, we're talking now 4 weeks after the launch, we sold 8 out of the 10 collector's editions. We made them special in terms of we will never create them again. So they are numbered, signed by the artist. So it's a really collector's edition. But I would never have thought that actually we sell 8 out of 10 within 4 weeks. That's kind of amazing. So, yeah.
And it's a real testament, isn't it? I mean, it's impossible to have conversations without an AI section in some way, shape, or form. And so often the conversation evolves around how can we produce more quicker? How can we, leverage the tools and not sound like AI and da 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 da. Whereas actually something that's beautifully handcrafted and 100% 2 people in a room with books and paints is just a beautiful item to own.
Yeah, I think, and I made that as a topic in the newsletter as well, which resonated quite well with people. I had a lot of answers on, response on this, is that question of, can you make something that not scales, that doesn't scale, and it's still valuable, And when you think about it, just in terms of business, on the business lens, we spend in total 12 hours on painting those edges for 2 people, but still we made close to 3,000 euros or something within 3 weeks of this, right? It's not a scalable business, but it's a heck lot of money for just a few books, as well as it's something outstanding. So people will talk about that for a while, and it will add up to my key resources of my business model. Oh, that is the guy who sold the collector's editions, and that is the guy who published. By now, I think I'm at 16 or 17 books. Or that is the guy with the Kickstarter. Over time, this compounds, and then people don't ask for a price anymore, and that's the final goal. As a coach, your final goal, because you don't have a scalable business anyways, and I don't believe all the online marketing of you can do like a scalable coaching business. That's kind of
Yes, that's a
that's
soapbox.
hustle.
I'll
That's
get on
hustle
with you.
culture, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hustle culture. It's just not true. And but what you can do is you scale your price, and when those kind of little things compound over time, and you say, look, my day rate is 8,000, and you have the right people in front of you, they will not a single second hesitate, right? Because you have compounded all those things over time.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? The quick fix, sort of 6 figures in 6 minutes brigade. It's
Yeah. Yeah. It's not real.
it's not. And so many of us are trying to double down on the ethics of being a coach. And actually, sometimes that ethics is around building a business over time with credibility, as you say, that leads you to deepening your position as a thought leader, which
Mm.
exactly is how your books facilitate that as part of a broader service offering, for sure. So the other thing I want to look back on is obviously, you publish in 2 languages, so it would be remiss of me not to notice that German is your first language and English is your second.
Mhm.
And again, you touched on very briefly that the German publishing market is quite different. So you've made some strategic choices around which books you publish in which markets, in which
True.
language, in which
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
How have you kind of approached that?
Yeah. So first of all, most of my business is in English. So I'm like before the pandemic, I would be global. After the pandemic, I focus more on Europe, but then virtually global still. So that's why I decided for English first in my publishing route, even though I'm not native. But then, I mean, you hear it quite clearly when I talk. When I write, I can write a bit better in terms of like mimicking proper English.
Is there
And
such a thing?
there is such a thing.
Is there?
At least the editors say that,
Oh,
and
yes.
and that's why hiring good editors as well
Mm.
is important then, right? So you can do that as well. So if you feel like I'm a French coach or something, but I need to write in English because the market is bigger, yeah, just do that. There are enough professionals out there to help you. I think you shouldn't have that like angst of reaching out and say, look, I tried to write my best English, but I need somebody that was my briefing to my editors always, is say, look, I've tried to write in my own voice. I tried to be the best I can. I did like use tools like Pro Writing Aid or like all tools I could use. But please edit this so like a native English speaker is not embarrassed to read it. And still is my voice. So I'm a German speaker. So it's important too. But then still, as a German native, I have a lot of people who know me as a German and they would read stuff in German. Like I always have the question in my newsletters, like, would this book be available in German as well? Now, the struggle in Germany is we have a very traditional book market, meaning the middleman is very strong. A lot of basically of my relatives, my friends, and even customers hesitate still buying on Amazon, or like would prefer to go to a bookstore or buy it in a German online store. So Germany is really like, Germans are a bit more special on this, especially when we look at America or something. It's a huge difference how they purchase. And you can, like as a self-publisher, it's really difficult to get to the bookstores. It's very complicated, a lot of processes, a lot of cost involved, and the middleman would not even talk to you. You would have to need a vanity publisher, and like it's a very complex process. And that's why I said, for my most important book, which is Creating Clarity, I wanted to have that in German, and I reached out to publishers and found a middle-sized publisher who would say yes. So they did it, which is comfortable because they take everything I had to negotiate a lot because I said I do like the translation myself. I did the design myself of the final book, everything. So they were allowed to have an editor looking at it, of course, but everything else I did myself, the
I
cover
love
and
the way you
stuff.
say it aloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that control again, even in trad.
There's the control again. So that went pretty smoothly. Then that publisher actually reached out beginning of this year or end of the last year and said, we want to publish a drawing book with you in German. So that was wonderful. With that drawing book, I took another approach. I said, like, I have less energy than before. And I said, like, you can have the content and you make the design and the translation, everything, and you publish it. That's fine for me right now, which is good too, to have, like, to know there's at least the option if you're willing to give up the control. Then I have a kids book. It's called The Wrong Planet.
I wanted to come on to this.
Yeah, it's The Wrong Planet. And when we're talking about German, I think that's very important because that was German first. It's written in rhyme, in loose rhyme, basically. It's fully illustrated by my illustrator, and it's a topic very dear to my heart, which is autism. And I really wanted to be able to spread that book as far as possible on the market. You know, it's not based on my business model. It's not like a business card for me. It has to get in as many hands as possible. That was the goal. Compared to Creating Clarity, I didn't care how many hands Creating Clarity would touch, you know, but I would care how many hands The Wrong Planet would touch. And that's why I said I need a publisher for that. So I went to the search, I had luck and found a beautiful, wonderful publisher here in Germany, and they took it over. But then the English translation, that was actually pretty difficult to find somebody who would translate German rhyme into English rhyme. Right? It's very specialized translation, very niche. I found somebody who was great at that job. And the English version, I'm publishing myself again, not a publisher, because I have full control and English is easier to publish anyways.
And again, we'll put all the links to all of these in the show notes, obviously, but it is a beautiful book visually, but also from a purpose perspective. And I think, you know, for parents particularly who have children who are going through this period of time where they feel lost and don't understand, it's something that can really help them through that time and understand why they're feeling. So it's a very powerful book in a very different way from the power of your other books.
Thank you.
So let's go back to this control question one last time, because again, what I often ask people how they get their books into the hands of readers, and we've touched on the traditional route for certain international markets, leveraging speaking opportunities, etc., but you also direct sell your books. So can you talk to us around why you made those decisions and how that works?
Yeah. So I'm selling direct for a few years now. And selling direct just means you set up a page, like a website, and you have somewhat of a paying system connected to it. I nowadays use Shopify, which is, I would say, the premium version. It costs quite a bit. I think I'm paying around 120 euros a month for just a website. But the thing is, it's a full website. So I don't need another website. I can build everything on this. You can build a coaching website on it too. There are other methods that I don't have in my mind right now, but you can link other payment systems as well. So that's the idea of selling direct. Why would I do that is, first, more control.
Obviously.
Obviously. Second is you just earn a lot more per book, right? So selling books is anyways not making you rich, right? Like, get that out of your mind. And there are the stories of Brandon Sandersons and like all the other best-selling authors who are selling millions of books. I have a good friend who sold like 3.5 million books. Yes, you can, in theory, get rich if you publish the right topic at the right time with the good marketing model behind it and a lot of luck, right? It's kind of like winning in the lottery. So you can't earn a lot of money. But if you're selling at Amazon, you're getting like a euro, like I'm talking in euros, so hopefully that's okay for the listeners, right? You get like a euro or a buck basically, or two, for your book. If it's selling, for example, for Creating Clarity, I think I'm selling that for, I think it's $29.99. My pardon if I get those things right, just as like a quick reminder, or like people don't know that, but I had a severe stroke a year ago and I'm missing a few of the facts. But it might be 29 or 39. I'm really not sure right now.
I can never remember how much my books are.
I don't know. But I'm getting like €3.50 from Amazon for that book.
Yeah.
Right? That's how like few money gets into your hands if you sell a book on Amazon or other platforms. And on Shopify, you have the full control. You pay Shopify 3, 4, 5%, depending on how people pay with a credit card or PayPal. And that's basically it. So roughly 90% of the money that they pay goes into your bank account. And from that, you can, of course, pay the production and whatever. You can, of course, charge for postage and those kind of things. So you earn quite a lot more, like significantly more money per book, which helping pay at least the Shopify, helping pay the production cost of the books. And you have way more control, because you can say you can build a landing page with just like a specific book that you want to focus people on. You could, for example, have like a digital business card with your book, right, where people right away buy the book on your platform. And I think the very most important thing is you have the data of your clients. It's like, of course, you can't use that in an ethical way right away, in terms of like when somebody's buying, you can not subscribe them to your newsletter. You can offer it to them, of course, but if they opt out, that's their choice. But when they made a sale, even in Germany, we are allowed to email them afterwards, say, I hope you liked the book. Did it reach you? And by the way, if you want to, you can subscribe to my newsletter. That's allowed even in Germany, right? So I think it's allowed everywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's a courtesy email. That's not in breach of GDPR.
So, and that's a great chance to grab them and keep them in your universe. But nevertheless, you have all the data anyways of your customers. Whereas with Amazon, you never know who bought 2 books, who bought 3 books. You can have automations in the backgrounds. You can understand who's buying everything that you do. I have some people who literally buy everything that I publish, including the collector's edition. Since 11 years or something, they bought everything. And I know that by now because I see it. Yeah. It's beautiful to see it, because you can have a content, like you can reach out to them and just say, thank you, right? How comes? Like, why do you buy everything I do? And sometimes those become the best coaching clients also, because they say, look, actually, I really love what you do. I never told you, but could we have a conversation?
Yeah.
So that's how
Kevin Kelly calls them your true fans, doesn't he?
Yeah, it is. It is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So during this over a decade, obviously you did just touch on the fact that you had a stroke a while back. How has that affected your creative process?
I think for my creative process, that was actually a blessing, if I may say it like that. I mean, it was like a horrifying event, and I would never wish anybody have that event or like happening that to them. And like I had a quite severe stroke, like a double stroke. I had a ripped arteria. I had blood in my brain afterwards. So it was quite severe. And I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't even see properly after the stroke. So basically my whole creativity was on the edge of, can I ever be creative again? But also being that sick and not being able to work freed me up to think about my own creativity again. It's a bit of a challenge, and you as a writer might feel that too, because you're a coach too. It's a bit difficult if your hobby becomes the business, right? And the borders are really like unclear and getting messed up. And I figured for myself, I didn't draw just for myself. For example, I didn't paint for myself for decades. Actually, I used to paint with oil and acrylics for myself, and in my 20s, and now I'm 45, and I think I didn't do it for 20 years or something. because I drew all the time in business and I was busy being busy, and then having 3 kids and like the normal
nothing
life
to do
going
with
on
3
too.
children.
Yeah, nothing to do with 3 children. Nothing at all.
Loads of spare time.
So the time that the stroke gave me and setting me back and everything I could do gave me the chance to come back to it as a healing process as well. So I said, like, I need to draw for my healing. I had an argument to draw again and to paint, to say, look, creativity is my healing process. It helps me on my cognitive abilities. It helps me on my with my hands and being capable of doing stuff again. And as it was so severe, I mean, it's a long time being not able to work. It's also a long time to establish routines, which was great. And I also learned that 5 minutes a day is already good, and it's good enough, right? I couldn't focus for a long time, so 5 minutes was basically anyways what I could do, sometimes 15 minutes. If I do 50 minutes of my own art, that's already like a blessing. It's a good day. So now I have a so-called dirty sketchbook where I like just mish and mash with acrylics, and it takes like 5 to 6 minutes a day. But I do like basically one acrylic painting a day in that dirty sketchbook, and it doesn't have to do anything. I've like started again with watercolor drawing. I have some more elaborate acrylics going on. I came back to my writing process, the fantasy writing. I needed a bit longer for that. I used AI for that because I couldn't write anymore. I'm not sure how you write, but when I wrote before the stroke, and now it's coming back slowly, I normally would think a sentence ahead while I was writing the current sentence. And I was not even able to think about something else than the character that I was writing. That was a challenge. So I used AI to design a program for myself, like a writing program, and I had not prompts for the AI, but I designed prompts for myself that I could do every day on writing. For example, how would you describe the light in your fantasy world as a taste? Write 5 sentences about that. So that would be a typical prompt. And I would do that like 30, 40 days. And after that, I could write again. And I was even better than before, I would say, because I integrated some learning
The
aspects
sensory
as well.
details of...
Yeah.
I love that. We talked about this in our preparatory conversation, didn't we, about what does light taste like? And I was like, oh, that's genius.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought about that, but it's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're using AI in a way to help prompt you is genius.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to do so, but it was really helpful. Also, because I built the briefings in AI, like the prompts in AI, I could also feed my outcome into AI, into the AI back, and say, like, this is what I did today. Give me feedback, and the AI would give feedback based on what I told them before on my draft and my writing style and the prompts, and I would get feedback in terms of, okay, you hit it here, you didn't hit it here, you could try this next time. And that really helped me grow as well. And it was way easier to do it with AI in that terms, because I didn't have to embarrass myself with a human being. Because I wouldn't have known somebody who would there might be people who I trust enough, but that's a really personal thing to do. If you can't write anymore, like if you could write before, you can't write anymore properly, and then show it to somebody and say, how could I improve? I wasn't ready for that, for a human being to see. So AI was very helpful on that one too.
Yeah, it's a very different answer to how does AI integrate into your process to conversations I've had previously. But again, such a useful way to use the tools that are available to us that weren't a few years ago. I am very conscious we've gone way over time, and I literally am like, oh my gosh. So, if you have any sort of lessons learned for listeners who maybe are just starting out on their writer's journey, what would you say to them?
So if you're just starting out, is ignore most of what people say that have published 16 books or more. Don't think about success while you're writing your book. I had my breakthrough with creating clarity when I decided to spend 20 to 30 minutes a day writing on the book. And I say that the time is important. I didn't say I need to write 800 words. I didn't say I need to write 1,000 words per day. I just said I need to sit down for 20 minutes and think about the book and in the best case, write some words. And when you start doing that, you will get to the finish line eventually. It will take a while, right? But the stories about people who write books overnight are all like either made up or people who have written 20 books before.
Yeah, or journalists.
Or something like who are professionals, right? That's not your story. Your story is being like full-time employed, most likely, or part-time. You have a busy life. You are a coach, whatever, and you want to write a book on the side, which is not your main business, and you can't spend like 5 hours on it every day. And don't get disencouraged, but like just spend some time. And I'm taking that on the fantasy book as a learning. I started writing the fantasy book, and I'm still on it the same like I started before. I think it was like 2.5 years ago I started writing the main story after outlining it and layouting and everything. And I spent 15, maximum 20 minutes a day that I felt like it writing on it, which is longhand writing, meaning 1 page in a notebook. 2.5 years sounds like a long time, but I have written roughly 130,000 words by now. It compounds, right? It's not a sprint. It's just step by step. Don't take it easy. And of course, when you're writing as a business coach, before you start, think about how does it fit my business, right? What do I want to achieve?
Wise words indeed. Holger, that has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. If we can close by, if you can tell people where they can find you, your services and your books online.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It was great to be here, Helen. So the easiest way is under my full name, Holger Nils Pohl, which is HOLGERNILSPOHL. You find me everywhere on socials under this name, as well as .com is my website. You find everything there. And if you want to, on my email list, which is a very personal email list, I just write like stories about what I'm thinking about, sharing my projects and having a weekly chronicle that I write. There's like, it's basically one of the lowest marketing emails you could get, I would say, on the market.
I am on your email list. I highly recommend it on a Sunday.
Yeah. And that's just /email. So you can find everything there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. You can get the show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachwrite.co.uk. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. Your words can make a difference. A review can too. If you'd like to connect, find me on LinkedIn, O'Neill Helen, that's O'Neill, ONEILL, or on Instagram at coach_write. I'll see you for the next chapter of Coach Write.